Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight, we walk a path known only to silence, memory, and moonlight. Before roads were carved into forests, before names were given to mountains and rivers, before human feet learned the weight of journey, there was the White Stag. He was older than the wind that shaped the treetops, older than the roots that grew beneath stone, older than memory itself. Some called him a spirit, some called him a god. Some swore he was simply the forest dreaming itself into shape. His antlers shone like crescent moons, curved and pale like bone carved from starlight. His eyes were pools of still midnight, deep, calm, and immeasurable. When he stepped upon the earth, leaves did not rustle, grass did not bend, and the world did not resist him, for the forest knew him, and it parted for him as one parts for a memory returning home. He did not walk as animals walk. He moved as thoughts move, appearing in the spaces between certainty and wonder, between waking and dream, travelers who had lost their way, wanderers who had forgotten their names, children who had strayed too far from warmth. They all saw him, but no one saw him twice. The White Stag did not lead paths. He led remembering, for there are roads inside the heart that no map can hold, roads that turn through grief and longing and silence, roads forgotten not because they were unworthy, but because the world grew loud. One night, beneath a sky heavy with winter, a young wanderer found himself lost, in a forest whose name men had long stopped speaking. His cloak was thin, his breath was trembling, and his steps faltered with every heartbeat. He had come seeking meaning. He had come to be rid of sorrow. He had come to forget. But the forest had another intention. It had brought him to remember. He tried to call out, but the trees swallowed his voice. He tried to trace his steps, but his footprints had vanished, as though the earth itself refused to let him return the way he had come. Then the wind stopped, the night stilled, the silence deepened until it felt like a hand softly resting against his chest. And the White Stag appeared, not in a flash of divine radiance, not in thunder or miracle, but simply as though he had been there the whole time, waiting for the wanderer to open his eyes. The young man froze. His fear did not rise. It dissolved. For in the stag's gaze, he saw no threat, no hunger, no command. He saw understanding, the kind that comes from having walked through ages of sorrow, without losing gentleness. The stag turned slowly, antlers catching pale moonlight, and began to walk, not away, but forward, into the woods. The wanderer felt his feet move. Before his thoughts caught up, he followed. The stag did not look back, yet the traveler felt guided, as though the space between them was a thread, woven from trust itself. Trees opened like curtains of shadow and silver. Moss glowed faintly beneath each step. The air tasted of pine, frost, and memory. No word was spoken. None were needed, for the traveler understood. He was not being led out of the forest. He was being led into himself. The path they walked did not belong to the world of maps. but to the world beneath thought, the world one enters in dreams, in grief, in silence, after a time that could have been minutes or centuries. The stag paused at the edge of a clearing. The moon hung low, its light resting gently on the earth like a hand laid in blessing. The white stag turned his head, just enough for their eyes to meet, and in that gaze the wanderer felt something shift. A door opening, a name returning, a home remembered, but understanding did not yet surface. It remained just beneath his heart, waiting, for the white stag does not reveal truth all at once. He leads you to its edge, and waits for you to step forward. The forest did not lead. It revealed. The young wanderer walked behind the white stag, though no sound marked their journey. The leaves did not rustle. The snow did not crunch. Even his breath seemed to fall quietly from his chest, as though the forest had asked him for silence, and he had agreed without being asked. He did not know how long he had walked. Time in this place was not measured by minutes or stars or moonlight. It was measured by awareness, and his awareness was widening like a door slowly opening. He remembered his name, though it felt distant, like a word spoken underwater. He remembered the village he had left behind, the smoke rising from chimneys in the pale winter dawn, the soft songs the elders sang beside the hearth, the laughter of children playing in the frost. He remembered love. He remembered loss. But most of all, he remembered leaving. Leaving had felt like a breaking, a clean fracture across the heart. Something had called to him then, something he could not name, a whisper in his chest that said, "There is more than this." He had not known what it meant. He still did not. But now, walking behind the white stag, he understood one thing clearly. He had been searching for this path long before his feet found it. The stag did not hurry. He moved with patience, with grace, with the assurance of one who knows the world does not need to be rushed to be reached. His antlers glowed faintly, not with light, but with memory. The forest glowed back, responding to him as one responds to a beloved voice. The wanderer felt warmth rise in his chest, a quiet, steady warmth that felt like being seen, not by another person, not by a god, but by the world itself. At last they reached a clearing. The trees opened into a circle of frost-covered grass. The moon shone full overhead, a silver world suspended in black infinity. In the center of the clearing stood a stone, ancient, weathered, half buried in earth. The stag stopped beside it. The wanderer approached slowly, his breath catching in a way that felt familiar, like remembering something he had never known. Symbols were carved into the stone. Spirals, rivers, branching paths, and the outline of a stag with antlers stretched upward like a tree reaching for the stars. The wanderer ran his fingers over the carvings. He did not recognize them, and yet he knew them. He felt them. The stag lowered his head, watching. A question formed in the wanderer's heart, not in words, but in longing. "Why have you brought me here?" The white stag blinked slowly, and the world shifted. Not physically, but inwardly. The clearing seemed to deepen, as though the ground had become an ocean and memory was rising from its depths. The wanderer saw flames, not of fire, but of change. He saw laughter, not sound, but meaning. He saw a child standing beside a river, pointing at the sky, saying, "I remember that star." But no star had been visible. The wanderer gasped. His childhood. He remembered something he had forgotten long ago. A dream he had carried in his chest before the world told him to let it go. He had once believed the world was alive. Not simply inhabited, but alive. He had spoken to rivers, and rivers had spoken back. He had listened to trees, and trees had listened back. He had followed fireflies through twilight paths, believing they were guiding him to something, someone, a truth waiting at the edge of the world. But as he grew, the world had grown heavier, and the dream had gone quiet, until now. Tears formed in his eyes, not in sorrow, but in return. The stag stepped closer. His breath was warm, warm like the memory of holding hands with someone you miss. The wanderer placed his hand against the stag's fur. It was soft, not like the softness of animal fur, but the softness of night wind, of stories whispered before sleep, of a mother brushing hair from her child's face. A softness born from care. The moonlight shimmered. The stag spoke, not with voice, but with presence. The path was never lost, only forgotten. The wanderer closed his eyes, and in the quiet he realized he had not come to the forest to escape life. He had come to remember how to live. He exhaled, and the air felt clear, clean, whole. When he opened his eyes, the white stag was already turning, walking onward, deeper into the forest, deeper into memory, deeper into the heart. The wanderer followed, not because he hoped to be led somewhere, but because he understood now. He was walking home. The forest grew deeper, not darker, for darkness implies something hidden. This was a depth that felt welcoming, like being wrapped in a blanket of memory you didn't realize you had been missing. The white stag walked ahead, unhurried, its antlers a pale constellation guiding the way. The wanderer followed, not because he sought answers, but because something inside him had begun to open, like a locked book whose pages were loosening, one by one. The trees changed as they walked. The trunks grew wider, older, weathered not by time but by experience. Moss grew in swirling shapes, as though tracing forgotten scripts across bark. The air was heavy with silence, but not empty silence. This was the silence of a cathedral, of a sacred hall, of breath held in reverence. And then the voices began, soft at first, like distant whispers rising with the wind. But no wind stirred. The wanderer stopped. He listened. At first he thought the voices came from far away, but slowly he realized they came from within the trees. The bark pulsed faintly, like breath beneath wood. Leaves trembled without moving. The air shimmered with something deeper than sound, memory. The voices were not speaking words. They were speaking feelings. He heard laughter, the kind that comes easily in childhood, before worry teaches itself to the heart. He heard a lullaby, not its melody, but its comfort. He heard the hush of sitting beside someone you love in quiet, where no words are needed because presence is enough. He heard gratitude. He heard grief. He heard longing. The wanderer's knees went weak. The white stag slowed, standing beside him. The voices swelled, not overwhelming, but tender, like hands guiding him through his own history. He saw himself as a child, running through the fields behind the village, hair wild, lungs full of laughter. He saw his mother's face, not clearly, but in warmth. Her hands, the way she squeezed his shoulder when she wanted to say "I'm here" without speaking. He saw the river where he used to sit at sunset, throwing stones and imagining they were messages to the sky. He saw the moment the laughter began to fade. The day he was told that dreams were not useful, that wonder was something to outgrow, that silence was something to fear, not cherish. The forest around him pulsed, gentle, steady, patient. He did not cry. He did not clench his jaw. He simply felt, and that was enough. The white stag turned its head, and the wanderer understood. The forest was not showing him what he had lost. It was showing him what had always been inside him, simply waiting to be remembered. He placed his hand on the nearest tree. It was warm, not like the warmth of fire, but the warmth of belonging. The voices quieted, not fading, but settling, like a choir resting after offering blessing. The wanderer breathed deeply, and the breath did not tremble. "Why does remembering hurt?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. But the white stag answered, not in sound, but in presence. "Because your heart grew to hold more than it believed it could." The wanderer exhaled slowly. He understood. The forest opened again, softly, the way curtains are drawn aside to let moonlight in. The path continued, not forward, but inward. They walked deeper. Every step was a returning. The wanderer no longer followed the white stag. They walked together, side by side, two beings, one ancient and unbroken, one human and healing, both traveling the same road, the road back to themselves. The forest did not lead them forward so much as deeper, into quiet, into memory, into the spaces where the world holds its breath. The wanderer walked beside the white stag now, no longer trailing behind. They did not speak, but their silence was not empty. It was shared. The path opened slowly, as though unfolding itself petal by petal. Ferns parted, branches bowed. The moonlight softened to a pale, silver glow that touched everything gently, as if afraid to disturb the stillness. They came upon a clearing, circular, ancient, and sacred. The air here was different, warmer, though snow lay upon the ground. Each tree around the edge of the clearing leaned inward slightly, like guardians gathered around a secret. At the center stood a pool, small, still, mirror-smooth. Its surface did not reflect the sky above, nor the trees, nor the stag, nor the wanderer. It reflected only what one carried. The white stag stepped forward and stood beside the pool, turning his dark, quiet gaze toward the wanderer. The man felt a soft, trembling rise within him. Not fear, but anticipation. Something long awaited was drawing near. He knelt beside the water. At first, he saw nothing. No face, no memory, no shape, only stillness. He breathed in. The forest breathed with him. A ripple, small as a heartbeat, moved across the pool. and the memory appeared, not a memory of childhood, nor of love, nor of loss, but of the moment before the first sorrow. He saw himself younger, smaller, before heaviness found him. Eyes wide, hands open, heart unguarded. He remembered the way he once moved through the world. Curious, unafraid, willing to believe in wonder without needing proof. And then, the moment it changed, the moment joy became something to protect, the moment vulnerability became a wound, the moment he began to hold silence inside him like a locked box, his breath tightened. The pool did not accuse him, simply showed. The white stag lowered its head, and the wanderer felt the presence of the forest itself gather close. Not pressing, not demanding, only waiting. He spoke. I thought I had lost him. The child in the water, the memory of that unguarded self, looked back at him. Not with blame, not with sorrow, but with invitation to return, to open, to remember. The wanderer's voice shook, barely more than a whisper. How do I go back? The white stag answered, not in words, but in the gentle warmth of presence. You do not go back. The wanderer closed his eyes. Of course, we do not return to who we were. We become who we were again, but with choice, with understanding, with love. He reached his hand toward the water. When his fingertips touched the surface, the pool did not ripple outward. It rippled inward, as though the water were sinking into itself, carrying the memory deeper into his chest. Warmth spread through him, not sudden, not overwhelming, slow, steady, like the first breath after waking from a long sleep. He opened his eyes. The child was gone, but the feeling remained. He stood. The white stag stepped closer, and the wanderer rested his hand against the stag's neck. The fur was cool and soft, like dusk settling across the earth. The forest exhaled. The path opened once more. The wanderer was no longer lost. He was no longer searching. He was remembering. Together, he and the white stag walked onward, toward a place where memory would become meaning, and meaning would become understanding. For the journey was not yet over. But now the wanderer knew why he walked. The forest no longer felt like a maze, nor a place to be solved. It felt like a presence, vast, awake, and listening. The wanderer walked with the white stag at his side, and though no words were spoken, understanding moved between them like wind moving through leaves. Every step felt lighter, not because the path was easier, but because he was no longer carrying himself alone. The trees around them shifted, not randomly but deliberately, like curtains parting to reveal what had always been just behind them. The wanderer realized something then. The forest had never wanted to confuse him. It had only been waiting for him to slow down enough to see, to remember. They came to a ridge where the forest opened into a valley. Moonlight pooled like silver water across the grass below, soft and deep. The air smelled of pine and stars. The wanderer breathed in, and the breath felt full, unbroken. He did not hurry. He did not try to understand. He simply allowed. The white stag stopped beside him, watching the valley with ancient, patient eyes. The wanderer followed its gaze and saw movement far below. Figures, many of them, They walked slowly along a winding path, each carrying something unseen. Some walked with heads bowed. Others walked with hands open, palms facing upward, as if offering grief to the night. The wanderer understood. They were like him, travelers who had forgotten, travelers who had been lost, travelers who were ready to remember. The white stag stepped forward and began to walk down the slope. The wanderer followed, the grass whispering beneath his steps. The closer they drew to the procession, the clearer it became that every person walking carried something different. Not objects, but memories. One held the shape of laughter, fragile and trembling. Another carried the weight of a goodbye. Another held nothing at all, not because they were empty, but because they had put everything down. The wanderer joined them. No one acknowledged him, not out of disregard, but because acknowledgement was unnecessary. They were all the same journey, the same ache, the same opening. The white stag walked beside him, guiding not from ahead, but from within the shared movement of their steps. The procession led to a glade where a single great tree stood. Not tall, not wider than others, but impossibly ancient. Its bark shimmered faintly, like moonlight caught in wood grain. Its branches curved not upward, but outward, as though embracing the space around it. Beneath the tree sat a woman. Her hair was the color of winter smoke, her eyes deep enough to hold dawn and dusk at once. She did not look old. She did not look young. She looked true. The wanderer knew her, though he had never seen her. The keeper of soft endings. The listener of unspoken prayers. The one who waits when we are not ready to move on. She smiled, not at him but for him. "You have come far," she said. The wanderer felt no need to reply. His presence was answer enough. She looked then to the white stag, and her expression warmed, as though greeting a friend who had never truly been absent. "You have guided him well." The stag bowed its head, not in subservience, but acknowledgement. The woman extended her hand, not to the wanderer, but to the space before him. "Show me what you carry." The wanderer hesitated, not from fear, but from tenderness. He reached into himself, not into memory alone, but into the quiet place beneath memory, where feelings lived before they had names. From that place he drew out something small, a fragment of sorrow, a moment he had never forgiven himself for. He did not speak it aloud. He did not need to. The woman nodded once, a gesture of profound gentleness. "You may set it down." The wanderer placed the sorrow at the roots of the tree. It did not disappear. It settled, found a home. The tree's branches rustled, not with wind, but with recognition. Leaves fell, drifting like slow snow, each one carrying a reflection of grief transformed into something living. The wanderer exhaled, and the breath rattled with the sound of release. The woman spoke again. "What you seek is not ahead." The wanderer looked up, meeting her gaze. "It is within." The words did not strike him like revelation. They did not shock or break or overwhelm. They simply fit, like a stone returning to the riverbed it came from. He closed his eyes. The world did not fall away. It settled into place. When he opened his eyes again, the procession was gone. The tree was gone. The woman was gone. The valley remained. The white stag remained. And so did he. But something inside him had changed shape. He was no longer searching for the path. The path was walking with him. The night was thinning, not fading, not retreating, only softening, the way a held breath softens when finally released. The wanderer and the white stag walked side by side until the trees parted into a meadow washed in early twilight, where neither night nor day held dominion. This was the threshold, the place between beginnings and endings, the place where choice lives. The night was thinning, not fading, not retreating, only softening, the way a held breath softens when finally released. The wanderer and the white stag walked side by side until the trees parted into a meadow washed in early twilight, where neither night nor day held dominion. This was the threshold, the place between beginnings and endings, the place where choice lives. The wanderer stopped. He felt no fear now. The forest, the sky, the very breath of the earth felt familiar, as though they were not outside him but within. The white stag turned to face him, its eyes reflecting not light, but understanding. The stag lowered its head, just slightly, inviting the wanderer to look closer. And he saw it. Not fur, not bone, not shape, but meaning. The white stag had never been separate from him. It had been the part of him that remembered wonder, the part that refused to let the world harden him, the part that believed there was more, always more, behind the silence, behind the fear, behind the forgetting. The wanderer spoke, not aloud, but in the language of the heart. "Thank you." The forest stirred in response, gentle as a hand resting on a shoulder. Leaves rustled, not in wind, but in blessing. The stag stepped back. Its outline shimmered, softening, dissolving, becoming light and breath and memory. Yet it did not vanish. It settled inside him, like a steady flame that did not flicker. A memory returned. He was never lost. He had simply been looking outward for what had always lived within. The path had not led him back to who he once was. It had led him back to who he had always been. The first sliver of dawn touched the edges of the meadow. Pale gold, soft rose, the kind of light that does not announce itself but arrives. The wanderer breathed in. The forest breathed with him. He stepped forward, not because he needed to leave the forest, but because the forest would now walk with him wherever he went. He carried the white stag. He carried the child he once had been. He carried the memory of sorrow that had found a home. He carried wonder. He walked toward the rising light, not to chase it, but to meet it halfway. For dawn was no longer something outside him. It was something he had become. The path did not end. It unfolded, softly, endlessly, and the world opened with it. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.